What do a melting glacier in the Arctic and a heavy metal printing press from the year 1440 actually have in common?
I mean, on the surface, absolutely nothing. Right.
But when you really dig into the mechanics of both, they are like these prime examples of humanity's terrifying, awe-inspiring ability to just completely and permanently rewire the globe.
Yeah, it's the ultimate testament to human leverage. We don't just exist within our surroundings, we fundamentally alter the operating system of the planet.
Exactly. So, welcome to the deep dive, and a special welcome to you, the learner, for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
Today, we are exploring the timeline of that leverage. And our source material for this deep dive is, it's honestly fascinating. It's actually curated from an advanced English language learning curriculum.
Which is a really unique way to look at this stuff.
It really is. It takes two colossal, incredibly complex themes and just distills them down to their absolute core components. We're looking at the massive environmental crises currently destabilizing our ecosystems and the historical turning points that engineered the modern world.
And the overarching framework here is crucial, Understanding the history of human capability isn't just some abstract academic exercise.
Right, it's totally practical.
Exactly. If we want to understand how to navigate the ecological bottlenecks we're facing today, we have to look backwards at how we built the machinery that got us here. Knowledge is really only valuable when it's applied to our shared future.
Okay, let's unpack this. And we're going to start with the immediate reality of right now. The sources break down our current environmental reality into four foundational crises.
Climate change, pollution, deforestation, and waste.
Right. But instead of just listing these as problems, we need to look at the mechanics of how they are actually dismantling global systems. Take climate change, for example.
Yeah.
We all know the basics, like driving cars, industrial factories, burning fossil fuels.
Sure.
But it's the atmospheric mechanism that the sources highlight, which really, shifts the perspective.
Right, because it's not just about things getting a little warmer. When we release massive amounts of carbon dioxide, we are fundamentally altering the chemical composition of the atmosphere.
It's like a blanket, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Those gases act as an aggressive insulator. They allow solar radiation in, but they trap the infrared heat trying to bounce back out into space. That's the greenhouse effect in action. It's a physical trapping of thermal energy.
And the downstream effects of that trapped energy are chaotic. We aren't just talking about, oh, I can wear shorts a few extra days in November.
No, not at all.
We're talking about severe volatility. The material specifically points to hotter summers, drastically shorter winters, and a massive increase in extreme weather events.
Like heavier rainfall and stronger storms.
Exactly. The energy has to go somewhere, and it manifests as atmospheric violence.
And it also manifests in the rapid melting of polar ice. The sources note the immediate tragic impact on local wildlife, like polar bears losing their hunting grounds.
Which is awful.
It is, but the systemic danger goes so much deeper than just local habitat loss.
Right, because when millions of gallons of freezing fresh water from those melting glaciers dump into the saltwater oceans, it actively disrupts global ocean currents.
The conveyor belts.
Exactly. Those currents regulate the temperature of the entire planet. If you stall the conveyor belt, the entire global weather system is thrown completely out of whack. It's a cascading failure.
Which is exactly how we have to look at the second pillar the sources cover, which is pollution.
Yeah, and the curriculum actually strips this down to a stark, incredibly visceral reality. There's a quote from a student in the material that simply says, "I don't like pollution because it makes the air hard to breathe."
Wow. Yeah, that's incredibly direct.
Right. It sounds so basic, but when you unpack it, it points to a profound systemic failure. We have engineered a society where the byproduct of our economic progress is actively compromising respiratory health. It is a direct assault on a basic biological need.
And that tension, the friction between immediate economic demands and long-term biological survival, that's the driving force behind the third crisis, deforestation.
Right.
We are clear-cutting massive swaths of the Earth's forests, and the drivers are entirely economic. We need the raw timber for construction, and we need to clear vast tracts of land for industrial-scale agriculture.
Just to feed a growing global population.
Exactly.
The text highlights the emotional weight of this, too. It says deforestation is sad because birds and monkeys need trees to live, which, again, super simple but heartbreaking. But the underlying mechanics of deforestation are terrifying. It's not just losing some trees.
Well, you're destroying an ecological water pump.
Yeah. I love the analogy the source uses here. It says it's like pulling a thread from a tapestry. The whole thing starts to unravel.
That is the perfect way to look at it. A forest isn't just a collection of wood, you know. It's a highly engineered biological system. The root systems of those trees act like a massive sponge, holding soil in place and regulating groundwater.
So when you clear-cut a forest, you aren't just removing the canopy, you are ripping out the root structures. Suddenly the soil can't hold water, it washes away.
The domino effect in action.
Right. The biological pumps that cycle moisture back into the atmosphere disappear, which means the local rainfall stops. You can literally turn a humid, thriving ecosystem into an arid desert just by removing the trees.
It permanently shifts local climates. It destroys long-term agricultural viability.
We are trading permanent ecological infrastructure for temporary economic gain.
And what is the byproduct of all that economic gain?
Oh.
That brings us to the fourth crisis, which is waste.
The landfills.
Yeah, we've built a consumption model that operates on a one-way street. We extract resources, manufacture goods, and then just dump the packaging into overflowing landfills.
And the sheer volume of plastics that simply do not decompose is insane. They just sit there for centuries, slowly leaching synthetic chemicals back into the land and the water supply.
It is a deeply flawed design.
Absolutely. But this is where the sources pivot, right? They don't just outline the failure of the system, they introduce the necessary structural redesign. They point to sustainability as the required operating model moving forward.
Right. And let's be clear about how we're defining sustainability here, based on the text. It's fundamentally an accounting concept.
How so?
Well, it means balancing the ecological ledger. It's using the Earth's resources carefully to meet our current operational needs, without ruining things for future generations.
It's shifting from an extractive economy to a regenerative one. And the material gives us concrete examples of this happening at scale.
Like the massive tree planting efforts.
Yeah, it highlights millions of trees planted in India in a single day to rebuild those biological water pumps. It also points to infrastructural shifts, like San Francisco's highly effective recycling program.
Right, diverting waste away from landfills and keeping materials inside the economic loop.
And of course, the rise of solar power, capturing clean, renewable energy directly from the sun. Though the sources are pretty pragmatic about this, they acknowledge the friction, like the massive initial capital investment for installation.
And the fact that solar is still highly dependent on weather and battery storage technology.
Okay, so this is where I really have to push back a little bit.
Okay, let's hear it.
I'm looking at the sheer, overwhelming scale of these problems. Overflowing global landfills, melting ice caps, disrupting ocean currents, and then I look at the individual actions the sources mention, like a person deciding to use a reusable water bottle or bringing a canvas shopping bag to the grocery store.
Right.
I have to be honest, it feels mathematically absurd. Can one person switching to a reusable shopping bag really make a dent when we're facing globally overflowing landfills? It feels like trying to stop a freight train with a feather.
It absolutely feels that way if you look at it purely as a one-to-one volumetric equation. Your single canvas bag does not offset an industrial smokestack.
Exactly.
But what's fascinating here is how collective individual action operates as an economic lever.
What do you mean by an economic lever?
Well, corporations don't produce single-use plastics because they love pollution, right? They produce them because there is consumer demand. When millions of individuals independently decide to shift their habits, they aggregate into a massive market force.
Oh, I see.
Supply and demand dictate the global economy. If a critical mass of people simply stop buying a disposable product, the economic incentive for the corporation vanishes. They are forced to retool their supply chains to survive.
So the individual action isn't about the physical plastic bag itself. It's about participating in a coordinated demand shock to the system.
Precisely. And the sources drive this home by connecting sustainability back to the most primal instinct you have, which is basic survival.
Right.
We often talk about saving the Earth, but the planet itself is just a rock floating in space. It'll survive climate change. It'll keep orbiting the sun long after we are gone.
That's a little bleak, but true.
But what sustainability is actually trying to save is a specific set of atmospheric conditions that allow human beings to grow fresh food and drink clean water.
Wow.
We are trying to save our own habitat.
We are trying to secure our own physical future. Okay, that makes sense. We've just seen the massive global impact of our modern actions. But humanity's ability to completely reshape the world isn't new.
Not at all.
Let's look at the second half of our source document and explore the historical turning points that built this modern world.
And the sources take us back to a moment that completely rewired the intellectual infrastructure of humanity, which is the year 1440.
Johannes Gutenberg and the invention of the printing press with movable metal type. Now, before 1440, the distribution of information was severely bottlenecked. Books were copied out agonizingly by hand by monks in monasteries.
Right, which meant knowledge was incredibly scarce, wildly expensive, and tightly controlled.
But the mechanism of Gutenberg's invention shattered that bottleneck. It was basically the internet of its time. Making books cheaper and faster completely democratized knowledge.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this unprecedented flow of differing viewpoints directly fueled massive cultural shifts like the Renaissance and the Reformation.
People no longer had to blindly accept the narrative handed down by gatekeepers. It permanently shifted human society.
And just a few decades later, humanity began shifting the physical boundaries of the globe.
Which brings us to 1492 and Christopher Columbus. Now, the initial intent of this voyage was purely economic. He was trying to find a faster sea route to Asia.
But instead, he collided with the Americas.
Right. And if we look at the impartial reality of what happened next, as outlined in our sources, this event triggered the Columbian Exchange.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it was a massive rewiring of the planet. On one hand, it birthed the first truly global trade networks, transferring plants and animals across continents.
But the sources are unflinching about the catastrophic consequences, too. This was the start of European colonization. And it was devastating for the indigenous populations. It brought highly infectious, deadly diseases like smallpox.
Populations had absolutely zero biological immunity.
Exactly. It was the complete upheaval and displacement of existing worlds. It's the starkest example of how a single expedition permanently altered the demographic map of the Earth.
It really demonstrates the terrifying scale of human impact. And when you combine the rapid spread of radical information from the printing press and the mass accumulation of wealth from global trade,
you get deep structural societal friction, which perfectly sets the stage for our next turning point, the French Revolution, from 1789 to 1799.
The triggers here are a masterclass in systemic failure.
Yeah. You have extreme poverty and unfair taxes burdening everyday folks, while the aristocracy and King Louis XVI lived in an insulated bubble of privilege.
Meanwhile, the everyday citizens are starving. And because of the printing press, they're aware of alternative philosophies of governance. So the system snaps.
The everyday folks rise up.
But as the material imparts, revolutions are incredibly messy. While it birthed ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity, and modern human rights,
it also spiraled into unimaginable bloodshed. The sources note the execution of the king by guillotine, which triggered a power vacuum that led directly into the Reign of Terror.
It's a sobering lesson on how quickly the pursuit of a utopian ideal can degrade into systemic violence.
A lesson humanity would be forced to relearn on a global scale in the 20th century. Which brings us to 1939 to 1945 and World War II, triggered by Nazi Germany invading Poland.
Pitting the Allies, the US, Soviet Union, and the UK against the Axis powers of Germany, Japan, and Italy.
It remains the deadliest conflict in human history. We are talking about millions of human lives extinguished.
And the sources impartially note that the conflict was brought to an end when the United States dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
It's the ultimate terrifying realization of human capability.
Exactly. The core lesson the text extracts from this is the extreme danger of unchecked aggression and the absolute existential necessity of maintaining global peace.
Once you invent a tool that can end civilization, unchecked aggression is a species-ending threat. But here's where it gets really interesting. History isn't just a ledger of our capacity for destruction.
Right.
Just a couple of decades later, in 1969, humanity achieved something that had been considered physically impossible, the Apollo 11 moon landing.
It's the ultimate contrast.
It really is. NASA astronauts Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins executed a mission that required incomprehensible precision. As the text highlights, Armstrong said, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind."
It proves that when human beings align their resources toward exploration rather than annihilation, our potential is literally boundless.
Okay, let's unpack this one last time. So what does this all mean? Look at the sheer scope of the journey you've just been on with us.
We started by examining the deeply fragile webs of our modern ecosystems.
Right. How the greenhouse effect melts a glacier and stalls ocean currents. How deforestation pulls a thread that unravels a local climate. and how plastics permanently contaminate the soil.
And then we looked at the historical turning points. The printing press, the Columbian Exchange, the French Revolution, the devastating technology of World War II, and the triumphant space exploration of the moon landing.
Every single data point proves that human actions leave permanent marks on the globe. We hold the tools to orchestrate our own collapse, but we also hold the tools to engineer our own survival.
Which leaves you with a final, vital question to mull over. History shows us that humanity has the capacity to invent world-changing tools, like the printing press, and accomplish the literally impossible, like landing on the moon. So looking at the severe environmental crises we discussed at the start of this deep dive, what completely unimaginable technological moonshot might be the next historical turning point written about in future textbooks to save our planet?